Treasure is brought to you by EB Games. We take games seriously.
Now here's one of the first generation Xbox games. This one was called Wreckless, the Yakuza Missions. Now Wreckless actually is the very first Japanese developed Xbox game. The graphics aren't as amazing as some of the Xbox graphics out there, but this game's all about speed and fun. I mean, basically, you get into a car and all you're doing is wreaking havoc everywhere. You're trying to smash into other cars and you're taking out pedestrians and tables and chairs and smashing through buildings and all sorts of crazy wacky stuff. And some really cool vehicles you can get into and use as well, like a DeLorean. It's always fun to wreak havoc in a DeLorean, similar to like Marty McFly, you know what I'm saying? And even different storylines that you take depending on which mission or which trail you choose to go down. So it's a lot of replay value as well. Wreckless even came out on the GameCube and the PS2. Pick it up on any of the systems, it's really good. Wreckless, the Yakuza Missions. Hi.
Today in Versus, we're going to be taking a look at two NBA games. We've got ESPN NBA Basketball versus NBA Live 2004. Okay, what did you think of these two basketball games? Let's start with Sega's ESPN NBA Basketball.
Well, the graphics looked, I thought, better on ESPN. The crowds look more realistic.
The facial animation.
And the players themselves. I mean, when you get some close-ups of like players like Shaq and stuff, you have to take a double take. Like, is that him?
It's absolutely
you got that whole high-def thing. I mean, it really looks like a PC game, almost to the point of being too sharp.
Right. The high-def elements of ESPN are really amazing. It'll play in 720 progressive, which is gorgeous for people with a high-def display. But the camera's pulled so far back, much further back from the NBA Live game, which I felt, even though it might not have looked as slick, looked a little bit more realistic, a little bit more fun, and it drew you into the experience. You can see all the players moving around. They used 5-on-5 motion capture to build the technology behind the game, and that means you're looking at players running around all over the place, even off the ball, which is something I've always wanted out of an NBA game. Very nice.
Better graphics on ESPN, but better camera angles on NBA Live.
Now, what about the gameplay in these two games? Let's compare those.
Absolutely give the nod to EA's game Live. I mean, it's unbelievably a lot more fun to play. The artificial intelligence,
really great.
I mean, guys box out.
Yeah.
It's actually hard if you're on offense to get a rebound if people are boxing you out.
Even just to go in and do the dunking. In 2003, you could run the floor no problem and score at will. In this game, the guys will defend you very vigorously, which is awesome to see. ESPN's game is decent as well, but it feels a little bit clunky.
Now, because it is ESPN, though, you do have a lot of those fancy presentation style things like
Love the replays.
which is really good and better.
Yes.
But boy, did they screw up the free throw.
Yeah.
Big time. They really.
The free throw is better this year than it has been. You still have to use both.
Yeah, it went from really, really, really crappy to just really, really crappy.
I like what they did with NBA Live, where they actually put the free throw meters into the backboard. That's really cool.
Way to go.
The ESPN game has a 24/7 mode, which is kind of like a basketball RPG. If you don't keep playing with the player that you create, his skills will actually diminish. It's like playing EverQuest or something with your basketball player. You get online with ESPN on both the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox. Live, of course, only offers it on the PlayStation 2.
EA.
Which is not cool.
EA, not cool.
So that
Xbox Live.
That's probably a deciding factor for hoops fans that want to play online out there between which version to get for the Xbox. All right, let's talk about the audio in these games then.
All right, well, EA has Marv Albert and all his panty goodness.
Oh, you had to bring up that, huh?
Hi, I'm Marv Albert. Why are you laughing? Well, yeah.
Well, the panty goodness thing has nothing to do with why I like the audio in NBA Live. The audio in the Sega game isn't bad at all. It just feels and sounds a little bit thinner and not as fleshed out. So overall, what are your impressions of both of these games?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, NBA Live from EA is a much better game. When you're talking about sports games, I want the most fun experience, and EA gave that to me.
Absolutely. The 5-on-5 mocap is a big, huge improvement. The artificial intelligence on the defense is awesome on NBA Live. I liked ESPN basketball as well, and if you've got an Xbox and you want to play on Xbox Live, that's probably the version to get. but I have to say I like NBA Live better this year. So what are you going to give ESPN NBA Basketball?
I'm giving it a 7.
I'm going to give it an 8. What are you going to give NBA Live 2004?
I give that an 8.
I'm giving that a 9. So when it comes to Live versus ESPN, it looks like Live is the winner this time.
Today on the show, we took a look at The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King from Electronic Arts. It's for the PlayStation 2, but also for the GameCube, Xbox, and PC. It's an incredible adaptation of the awesome Peter Jackson movie, but there are still some invisible walls and camera frustrations. On the PC, we looked at The Lord of the Rings, War of the Ring. This real-time strategy game's got some great storytelling and some cool music, but it's still a little bit disappointing in the visuals department, and it's not that innovative. Also on the PlayStation 2, we looked at Intellivision Lives. If you're a super fan of that old console, you might like this, but be prepared for some pretty crappy controls and behind-the-scenes stuff that's really tough to watch. In Versus, we looked at NBA Live 2004 from Electronic Arts for the GameCube, PC, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. This game got an incredible boost in the action department with its 10-player motion capture and tough defense. We also looked at ESPN NBA Basketball from Sega for the PS2 and Xbox. The Xbox Live and PS2 online experience is great, and we love that 24/7 mode, but Tommy and I both agree this one's just not as fun as NBA Live. In hardware, we reviewed Sony's iToy for the PlayStation 2. This is an incredibly addictive and innovative peripheral, but some of the mini-games are better than others. On the Game Boy Advance, I reviewed The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. This is a pretty cool translation for the GBA. It's got some great sounds, but the action does get a little repetitive. You know, the good guys are overwhelmed by Sauron's forces, you know.
Sauron.
Sauron, okay.
Sauron.
Sauron, okay.
No, no, Sauron.
Sauron, okay.
That's better.
All right, here we go. Now, obviously, the good guys are you know, outnumbered by Sauron's forces.
No, Sauron.
Sauron's forces.
And Saruman.
And Saruman.
Right.
No.
That's
okay.
good. See, you got to say those like that.
All right, okay. They're outnumbered by the bad guy forces.
Now they're just the bad guys.
In the books or the movie.